St. Louis's finest, reminding us it is getting hot in here. We begin a new week with Mitt Romney facing an unrelenting barrage of questions and attacks over his time at Bain Capital. And just this afternoon, it was President Obama hitting his Republican rival as outsourcer-in-chief at the first town hall of his re-election bid in the battleground of Cincinnati, Ohio.
Today, we found out there's a new study out by nonpartisan economists that says Governor Romney's economic plan would in fact create 800,000 jobs. There's only one problem. The jobs wouldn't be in America. They would not be in America.
Ooh, kind of testy. In case you missed it, Romney's on the ropes, going into a second week now about the length and his tenure at Bain Capital. He says he left in 1999, but government documents say he stayed on in some capacity until 2002. Here's how senior advisor Ed Gillespie tried to spin it Sunday on Meet the Press.
He actually retired retroactively at that point, David, because he ended up not going back to the firm after his time in Salt Lake City.
Kill it on that. And if you don't know what retired retroactively means, don't worry. Nobody else does either. For his part, Romney still couldn't dodge the Bain burden, even after 5 interviews on Friday, and even from his friends at Fox, where he tried the old look over there approach this morning.
Wouldn't it be interesting, Mr. President, if you spent some time looking at your record, if you spent some time looking at what you've done over the last 3.5 to 4 years?
That before heading off to a high-dollar fundraiser in Baton Rouge, with 40 participants paying $50,000 a pop to lunch with Mr. Romney. Unfortunately for Mitt, the president took the air right out of those sales, saying his handling of the economy is completely fair game.
You don't hear me complaining about him making that argument, because if I was in his shoes, I'd be making the same argument.
So the president expects to talk about his record. What a concept. But one thing he won't do is apologize, as Romney has demanded, for bringing up the Bain question.
First of all, you're not going to apologize.
No, we won't be apologizing. And I don't, sometimes these games are played during political campaigns. I understand what the issue is here. Mr. Romney claims that he's Mr. Fix-It for the economy because of his business experience. And so I think voters entirely legitimately want to know, well, what exactly was that business experience?
Yes, sir, Mr. President. Inquiring minds want to know. Let's bring in our panel now. In New York, Republican strategist Ron Christie, and here in Washington, Democratic strategist Julian Epstein. Ron, let me start with you. What does it mean to retire retroactively? Can you break that down for me and the rest of America?
Good afternoon. I think I can. What Governor Romney did when he left Bain Capital is that he elected to go on a leave of absence to run the Olympics in February of 1999. This is something similar to what he had done when he had left to run against Senator Ted Kennedy in a previous position when he was at Bain. He decided, since he was going to hopefully return to Bain Capital after he elected not to return, he said, I'm not going to return to my part-time or full-time status. Instead, I'm going to retroactively elect to not come back to Bain Capital. So this is really a sleight of hand that the president and his campaign are running as if Governor Romney were somehow in charge of Bain Capital. The Washington Post PolitiFact has looked at this and said that that's demonstrably false. The Boston Globe, who wrote a book on this, on Governor Romney, has also said that he left in February 1999. So I think this is more of a political statement than it is anything based in fact.
But Ron, wait a minute. Tell us here, the sleight of hand may not be the legerdemain, is not Obama's, but it certainly is Romney's, because if you retire, you put the date out there, this is the date of cessation, you cease to be paid, and so on and so forth. But when you retroactively retire, that means you extend beyond the ostensible date, and now you've got some gray area here. Don't you understand why the rest of us find that a bit fudging of the facts?
No, I don't think there's any gray area whatsoever. The fact of the matter is that Governor Romney was the lone shareholder, as we know, but of course he did not have any obligation, obviously, of running the company. That's a huge distinction. So in other words, your name might be in the SEC filings as the lone shareholder, but in fact, when you look at contemporaneous documents back at that time, back in 1999 and 2000, Romney was not listed as one having any managerial control. So he had no managerial control. He left abruptly to go to the Olympics, and of course they were looking for the cessation. So I don't think there's anything here other than more political muckraking.
Wow. Julian, I've got a feeling you don't think there's political muckraking going on here. Romney tried to start the week on the offensive, going after the president for alleged political payoffs. Take a listen.
But if you're a campaign contributor to Barack Obama, your business may stand to get billions of dollars or hundreds of millions of dollars in cash from the government. I think it's wrong. I think it stinks to high heaven.
Julian, anything to this? And of course, I know you want to weigh in on the other Ron's, Brother Ron Christie's viewpoints about the sleight of hand that may have been going on and the rhetorical manipulation with retroactive retirement.
Sure. Just with respect to what Ron said, I mean, the next thing we'll hear is Governor Romney retroactively vetoed the Massachusetts health care bill as well. The problem with what Ron said is that it takes so long to say it, and it's so unintelligible to the average voter. I mean, this story has had so much life, I think, for a couple of different reasons, Michael. One is, and there's so many threads to pull on and so many insights as to what this would mean, what kind of insight this would give you in terms of how a Romney presidency would look like. First of all, it's the ineffectiveness of the campaign, the inability week after week for them to get ahead of this story and put this story out, the drip, drip, drip nature of this, the fact that he hasn't really been vetted as a candidate, even by his own side. Right. Secondly, it's this idea that even when he says he's in charge between 1999 and 2002, he's not really in charge, which is not really the way most people think of a president. So while Ron may have an explanation for that, I don't think that is going to really fly politically. Third is this idea of secrecy. You know, the idea that Romney has had so many investments abroad, his personal finances in particular, in the Cayman Islands and the Swiss bank accounts. People don't like the idea that he won't release those returns. People don't like the idea of secrecy. People really don't like the idea of what's behind that, which is the reason that you invest in the Cayman Islands and Swiss bank accounts is because you want to avoid tax liability. You are gaming the tax system. Right. So the standard that Romney's father set of releasing 10 years of tax returns, he doesn't want to abide by his own father's standards because obviously he and the campaign are worried about something. There is a tax avoidance issue here in addition to the secrecy issue. And fourth is this issue of priorities. You know, the idea that he would invest so much when he was at Bain Capital and in his personal finances, invest so much abroad, tells you about the kind of priorities this guy would have as a president. Right. And so with respect to your question about the crony capitalism, this idea of Solyndra being the way that they're going to push back, I mean, if that is their best argument, good luck. This has been vetted by news reporters over and over. Solyndra was a program that was started by the Bush administration. Right. Bush campaign contributors. Actually, that's absolutely let me finish the point if I may. Right. Bush campaign contributors were actually... Bush campaign contributors actually were supporting that. The Bush political team tried to get the Solyndra loan through, and it didn't go through. Right. So that's just a dog that won't hunt. That is demonstrably
false. Look, this is how I'm going to respond to the retroactive issue. I think the President of the United States is really demeaning his office when he says that he's not going to apologize for his campaign and for the chairman of the Democratic National Committee to allege that Governor Romney may have broken the law and that he might be engaged in felonious activity. I think that we can put this behind us quite simply, Doc. I think this is what we do. If the Obama campaign believes that Governor Romney has committed crimes or he's broken the law, they should file paperwork with the SEC and say, we want to get to the bottom of this. If they don't believe that, then that to me indicates that this is nothing more than political posturing. Look, these are very serious issues. The Obama campaign
how about tax? Wait a minute. What about the tax returns? If you're going to make a parallel between the paperwork that should be forthcoming, that should be filed by the Obama administration, what about, on the other hand, Mitt Romney finally releasing the tax returns that we have been arguing over for so long?
And that Republicans don't release.
And look, there are some Republicans out there. George Will said this on one of the shows yesterday.
Governor of Alabama.
The fact of the matter is, Governor Romney has fully complied with the law as it relates to disclosure. There are those who I think are on the other side of the aisle who are looking to get through his tax records more to demonize him. He has fully complied with the law. But again, this is a very serious matter. President Obama has been very successful in shying away from 41 straight months where we've had unemployment above 8% to talking about Bain Capital. He's bashing the private sector. He does not want to issue the necessary paperwork when he, on one hand, says that Governor Romney has engaged in felonious activity, but won't take the step necessary to back that up. So we have a distinction with a huge difference to that.
We're at the end of time. I wish we could carry this debate forward. We know Julian Epstein and Ron Christie are good friends who would like to continue this off camera. Stay with us.